Now, while citrus production is the #1 moneymaker for Florida as a whole, here in Manatee County, the #1 moneymaker is vegetables. Everything from tomatoes, cabbage, peppers, the whole lot brings in more than $400 million to this area. The stakes are high here at High Hat Ranch. This is where William Skeeter Bethea oversees more than 2,000 acres of vegetable production, everything from tomatoes to cabbage and even mustard greens. And it takes a lot of green to get that crop in the ground.
When I first started in the 80s, about a $3,500 an acre crop to now being like a $10,000 an acre crop. But we're still selling our boxes on the same markets. So you're still averaging $8.
That's $8 per box of tomatoes. Bethea says he normally gets about 1,500 boxes per acre. Do the math and you'll find there's not much of a profit margin. And this is part of the reason why.
Just our input costs in general, one of our biggest costs is labor. Minimum wage is up over $7 an hour. And if you just pay somebody straight by the hour, they tend to milk those hours. And if you incentivize them where they got a chance to make more than that, you got to be careful. Because the law says every minute they spend on the farm, they have to average more than minimum wage, which is like $7.25, $7.26, or whatever it is now.
In South Florida, you can multiply all of those input costs by 2 because for most of these vegetables, there are 2 growing seasons, spring and fall. So every dollar counts.
Especially on a year like this year, we've had tremendous rainfall, tremendous cold, and just the adversities with that. But the markets, I guess the markets are really crazy right now. They're really, really hot, but I don't know if we got enough boxes on that high market to really do us a lot of good. I'm just not sure yet.
I am on the Manatee County Board of Directors for Farm Bureau.
Ben King says it cannot be much worse than 2008. That's when for one day, FDA inspectors suspected Florida tomatoes were the source of a salmonella outbreak.
Our packing house that we were running our tomatoes through shut down within about 48 hours of the salmonella scare first coming out.
King says Florida farmers knew immediately their fields were clean. That's because prior to the scare, growers here had already hired third-party inspectors to make sure the vegetables grown here are clean.
It hurt not just the Florida tomato industry, but the entire tomato industry. The markets were terrible, terrible, terrible up until just recently from that effect. And it was never a tomato, it was a jalapeno out of Mexico.
And that's just one example of tomatoes taking the brunt of being falsely accused of salmonella. And then, a year and 2 later, now there's even more, regulation.
King says the new regulation came in the form of the Tomato Good Agricultural Practices, or TGAP number. He says without that number, growers cannot ship a single tomato. Here's the catch. King says growers had already implemented the practices voluntarily years before the state mandate. Only now, growers have to pay for the same inspections twice. It's an extra cost. It's a $300 or $400 an acre cost just to monitor all the things that go into that. And it's a daily grind,
So it's just another hoop. But you add up enough hoops and you're spending all day jumping. You're not spending any time farming. My daughter was asking me this morning, what would you do if you didn't do this, Dad? And I'll be danged if I know. This is what my grandfather did, this is what my dad did, this is what I do. So you keep going because that's what you know. Manatee County also has a growing ornamental horticulture industry comprised of more than 150 nurseries.